Amen. Good evening, everyone. I am Jeremy Knindike. I'm the president of Refugees International, and it is my distinct honor and distinct privilege to welcome all of you to the Refugees International 2025 Advocacy Awards. Now, so Tom Malinowski is on our board, former member of Congress, also, when he was younger, a former presidential speechwriter at the White House. And he looked at my speech earlier and said, "You don't have a joke to open with." So I'm afraid I don't have a joke to open with, but next time Tom is going to look over my speech before I address the next year's gathering. But what I do want to do to start us off tonight is to acknowledge the building that we are in. And the choice of venue tonight is very intentional and for many of us very significant. We're in the Ronald Reagan building, and this for decades was the building that housed one of my former employers, USAID, the U.S. Agency for International Development. And let's just give USAID So we chose this tonight, partly as a small act of resistance. As I think all of you, if you're attending this gathering, as you likely know, USAID has been illegally dismantled by Elon Musk and President Trump over the last 3.5 months. And it is a loss to the country, it's a loss to the world, and I know for many of you, if you have worked at USAID or worked with USAID, it's also a very personal loss for many of us. And so we chose this building to honor the work and the people and the mission of USAID over its 60 years, and in the hopes that at some point in the future, it will in some form come back, and that the core mission that USAID pursued of supporting the vulnerable, of helping the people that Refugees International works to support, will not die away. The attacks by President Trump and by Elon Musk on USAID and on foreign aid more generally have been really devastating for the people that we work with and the people that we work for around the world. Over the past few months, teams from Refugees International have traveled to Kenya, to Syria, to Bangladesh, to Central America, and in each place, we are witnessing how damaging and destabilizing the withdrawal of U.S. assistance and U.S. humanitarian support has been. We witnessed hospitals in Syria shutting down just as that country is beginning the difficult work of rebuilding after the fall of Assad. We saw the closure of programs in Bangladesh that provided flood-proofing in refugee camps, just as the monsoon season is about to start next month. In Kenya, we saw protests in the refugee camps when food rations were cut to 40% of the bare minimum because of the withdrawal of U.S. support. And the outrages don't stop at refugee aid. We are also seeing widespread attacks by the U.S. government on displaced people who have found shelter here in the United States. There are threats to kick out Afghans, Ukrainians, Haitians, Venezuelans, and others who came here to obtain safety through humanitarian parole and refugee programs. At the border, the U.S. government is now jailing lawful asylum seekers. They are separating families. Just a few weeks ago, our team interviewed a family that had been deported to Costa Rica, that had come lawfully to the U.S. border, had requested asylum, and in response, a mother and her 12-year-old son had been detained separately. The mother was held in women's detention, and her 12-year-old son was held in separate detention with a bunch of teenage boys who spoke he was Armenian, a bunch of other boys who he couldn't even speak to. He was so traumatized by this that during the interview with our team, he wouldn't let go of his mother. They were kept separate for days before finally being sent to Costa Rica without ever having the chance to even ask for asylum. As a parent of adolescent boys myself, I can only imagine how devastating that must have been for him and for them and must still be. It will define their life. And these kinds of stories are tough, but they also highlight what I think makes Refugees International such a unique and vitally important organization. Since our founding, and we're honoring our founders here tonight, since our founding, we have refused to take government funding, and that has given us the independence to be a vocal and visible voice and actor in fighting back and bearing witness at moments like this. At a time when a lot of our peers are struggling and have to tread cautiously to avoid retaliation, we have the freedom and the privilege to be able to speak unfettered truth, to do so really loudly, and to fight back against the cruelty and the recklessness and the fundamental lawlessness of some of the assaults that we're seeing on displaced people in the US and around the world. And that's an important thing at a time when there is so much noise and so much confusion and so much willful disinformation. The ability to speak the truth clearly and loudly and to stand up and visibly challenge wrongdoing by the government, the power, in short, to conduct powerful advocacy, it could not be more important. And that mission of RI really traces back to our honorees tonight. We will be honoring Sue and Charlie Morton. Sue was the founder of RI with a lot of support from her husband, Charlie. And Sue founded Refugees International 45 years ago to be a loud voice precisely at moments like this one. Sue was inspired to found Refugees International when she was living in Southeast Asia and witnessed cruelty towards refugees on the Thai-Cambodia border. That was the late 70s. Now in 2025, we're still here, and we're bearing witness to cruelty on our own border, carried out by our own government. At times like this, it's difficult emotionally, it's difficult professionally, and it's really important to find community. And so we are so glad to gather with all of you tonight, to gather with people who share our values and are moved to support this mission. Because we take no government funding, we are very dependent on all of you as well. So we are very grateful that you've shown up. The freedom that we have because of our independence depends on all of you. It relies on all of you and supporters like you, and that's what sustains our work, and we're incredibly, incredibly grateful for that. I want to particularly shout out a few of our lead sponsors tonight, Maureen White and Steve Ratner and Elizabeth Galvin, who have made the lovely evening possible tonight. Thank you, Steve, Maureen, and Elizabeth. Also want to recognize and thank Senator Maria Cantwell, who is taking the time to join us this evening. Thank you, Senator. And a few words of appreciation for our team here. We have a remarkable, supportive board of directors and a strong alumni group of directors emeriti who stick with and support the organization, and we are always grateful for their continued stewardship, their passion for the work, and their continued commitment to the organization. But most importantly, it is my daily honor to get to work with the incredible team here at Refugees International. Our staff are the backbone of our work, and they inspire me every day with their commitment to this fight, even in difficult times. A particular thanks to Becca Meyerowitz. I'm not sure, Becca is probably going around making things work somewhere. Becca is our VP of Philanthropy. Thank you, Becca. And she is the maestro who orchestrated tonight's gathering, so if you see her later, make sure she has a drink in her hand once it's all said and done. So with that said, we have a wonderful program for you this evening, and we're going to get to it. We're going to present our annual McCall-Pierpaoli and our annual Richard C. Holbrooke Awards, and then I will sit down after a short break with our guest of honor, Ezra Klein, for a fireside chat about this current political moment and what organizations like ours and people who are committed to protecting the displaced should be doing and how we should be understanding where we go from here. So without further ado, I'm going to turn the mic over to my colleague, Dan Sullivan, for the annual Richard C. Holbrooke Award.
Thank you, Jeremy, and good evening, everyone. Each year, Refugees International gives the Richard C. Holbrooke Award to a member of local civil society who has demonstrated courage and commitment in assisting displaced people. The award is given in memory of Mr. Holbrooke, who served as the chairman of the board of Refugees International before he left to become chief negotiator at Dayton, at the Dayton Accords, which ended the war in Bosnia. Richard Holbrooke himself was the son of refugees who fled Nazi Germany and a lifelong advocate for displaced people. He worked tirelessly to shore up support in Washington and around the world to make sure that people were safe. His leadership provides an important lesson for our current moment, highlighting what's possible when there's the political will to act. He spent time, including with Refugees International, traveling to speak directly with people who are displaced, to understand their challenges and their aspirations, and to bring back that responsibility to Washington to make the world a better place. On a personal note, I've been inspired by Richard Holbrooke. In 5th grade, I won an essay contest about his efforts in Dayton. Was really inspired. That led me down the career path that I'm in today, and eventually we're ending up at Refugees International. So it's a real honor to be able to present this. And we know that he would have been inspired by this year's Holbrooke Awardees, the Sudan Emergency Response Rooms. Since the outbreak of the war on April 15th, 2023, Sudan has been experiencing the worst humanitarian crisis in the world. There's more than 12 million people who have been displaced and more than half of the population that is dependent on humanitarian aid. To meet these needs, the People's Response to the War, the Sudan Emergency Response Rooms, emerged. The ERRs, as they're known, grew from neighborhood groups and local volunteers. They are primary responders, distributing life-saving food through communal kitchens, providing medical support, helping with evacuations of vulnerable civilians, forming women's cooperatives, and acting as frontline aid workers in areas unreachable to the United Nations or NGOs. These mutual aid networks have empowered Sudanese citizens to lead their humanitarian response. For millions of Sudanese, mutual aid is a lifeline, as they often receive aid solely from these local groups. The success of the ERRs is rooted in their local knowledge and relationships, allowing their flexibility, resilience, community trust building, and context-specific decision-making. ERRs are the actors best placed to assess and address the most pressing humanitarian needs in their communities. These services continue despite complex security conditions, which have led to the deaths of many volunteers. We'll now play a short trailer for an upcoming film on the ERRs produced by the Ayin Network with support from Crisis Action, which really brings this work to life.
الشباب الشغالين في التكايا وغرفة الطوارئ حتلقاهم اصلا هم كانوا يعني الزوار.
الاغتصاب ده كان لشنو؟ عمليه لشنو؟ بيستخدموه كسلاح ضد الناس اللي قاعدين ديل.
فيوم قمنا بتقويم بتاع الطوارئ. يمكن ضيقه جدا.
انه نحن نكون بين اتجاهين مسلحين.
ماشيين وين؟
وعد خلاص نرجع نطبخ.
التطوع هو أداة أو وسيلة من وسائل الاحتياج.
طلقة غشت بجاي وطلعت بجاي الأضم اللي اتكسر من النص.
فكان أول متطوع إنه نحن فقدناها ساجدة عبد المولى، فهي كانت عبارة عن الأخت والصديقة.
We are honored to have Haitham El Noor and Haneen Ahmed here tonight representing Sudan's emergency response rooms as part of the ERR External Relations team. It has been a great honor personally to have the chance to work with them in various Sudan advocacy we've done over the last couple of years, and to really see firsthand the work that they're doing. Alongside the award, Refugees International will be giving the ERRs a donation of $5,000 in recognition of their efforts. Congratulations, Haneen and Haitham.
Good evening, colleagues and friends. It's truly an honor to accept Richard Holbrooke Award tonight on behalf of Sudan's Emergency Response Room. On behalf of all the volunteers in Sudan Emergency Response Room, we extend our sincere gratitude to Refugee International, Jeremy, board members, and friends for this great honor. This recognition is not personal one. It's a testament to the resilience and dedication of our countless brothers and sisters who have worked in the toughest, sorry, I'm so nervous and I'm sorry. toughest conditions imaginable to provide relief and hope in our beloved Sudan. Tonight, I humbly accepted this award on behalf of over 20,000 coordinating members in the emergency response rooms, who through the power of the mutual aid managed to deliver mutual aid in places that even the most experienced humanitarian cannot reach. Over the past 2 years, we have witnessed countless challenges. The recent US humanitarian aid policy changes have further challenged our efforts. While the President's life-saving exemptions are in place, their implementation has been so slow, even as conflict continues to escalate. On the second day of the war, April 16, 2023, I joined young people from Khartoum State to put their fear and concerns aside to volunteer for emergency response rooms, as known as ERR, local effort to serve the most basic needs of our citizens, including soup kitchens, medical assistance, and evacuation centers. Soon after the fight began, ERRs sprung up in many parts of Sudan with a strong presence in Khartoum and Darfur states. I was one of the founders of an ERR that covers several neighborhoods in my home city, Durman, across River Nile from Khartoum. Although I have since left Sudan for New York, I continue to work with my ERR and wider ERR network to coordinate activities and raise awarenesses about our needs. Sudan ERRs work every moment to evacuate people, including pregnant women, young children, and elderly, as warring force advance on our communities. We get aid to the people who the rest of the world can or won't reach. We try to bring some small hope. This work is proof of what can happen when you come together. We are students, doctors, teachers, engineers, mothers, brothers, ordinary citizens who chose to answer the call of the extraordinary times. We often wake up with 500 urgent messages on WhatsApp, even sometimes more. Each morning, the weight of every single message is the life. This pressure of knowing that every second counts, the scale of needs is overwhelming, and yet we keep on, because we know that even the horror of these last 2 years cannot defeat the will and courage of the Sudanese people. This work has taught us that the resilience is not just about the enduring hardship, it's about the profound willingness to give everything for the sake of others and still see hope. This recognition is more than an acknowledgement of our collective effort under the harsh humanitarian conditions our people are facing. It's a powerful message of solidarity that reflects the international community's belief in the justice of our cause and the importance of the standing with the communities enduring crisis and conflict. We deeply value this honor, which has reinforced our commitment to the principles of the mutual aid and drive us to persist in our humanitarian mission with integrity and determination. Our work is inspired and sustained by cross-border cooperation and solidarity of the civil society actors worldwide. We receive this award as a sole man's responsibility, and we pledge to continue serving with transparency and professionalism, remaining a voice for Sudan's war victim and displaced community who are in desperate need of protection, care, and international support. On behalf of ERRs, thank you for this incredible honor and for standing with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Haitham and Haneen, for your courage and for being with us tonight. Good evening, everyone. My name is Sopal Ir, and I'm a Refugees International board member. It's a profound honor to join you tonight to present the 2025 McCall-Pierpaoli Humanitarian Award, posthumously to Sue and Charlie Morton, founders of Refugees International, along with Michael Morrissey. We gather this evening not only to celebrate their legacy, but to honor their community, the kind of community that emerges when we come together across differences, across geography, across politics, in defense of human dignity. The community that Sue and Charlie helped build from nothing, and which all of us are now privileged to carry forward. It's hard not to reflect on the symbolism of where we are. This beautiful building, the Ronald Reagan Building and International Trade Center, was once the proud home of USAID, a building dedicated to diplomacy, to humanitarianism and development. Today, however, USAID has been all but dismantled, the agency's contracts terminated, its works disrupted, its leadership scattered. It is in many ways a hollowed out shell of what it once was. And yet, we are here, and Refugees International is here. We are here because Sue Morton, in 1979, refused to let inaction win. She organized a candlelight vigil at the White House to call attention to the crisis facing Southeast Asian refugees, Vietnamese, Laotians, Cambodian families like mine, who were fleeing genocide and war, living in camps and dying at sea. That night, President Jimmy Carter walked out of the White House onto the South Lawn, up to the fence to Sue, perhaps a little starstruck by Joan Baez in the crowd, and declared, "We can't let your people die." Those 6 words weren't just powerful, they were catalytic. They helped usher in a new policy moment, one that gave refuge to hundreds of thousands, including my own family. My mother, recently widowed after my father died of dysentery and malnutrition in a Khmer Rouge labor camp, pretended to be Vietnamese to get her 5 children out of Cambodia. We lived because of a decision, yes, but also because of an advocate, because of Sue. Refugees International was born out of that moment, and Charlie Morton, Sue's partner in every sense, made sure the lights stayed on when the funds ran low. Charlie stepped up. When the path was unclear, he steadied it. Their partnership was as much about practical resilience as it was about moral clarity. Today, Refugees International continues their legacy in ways that remain true to their original vision: bold, principled, and independent. RI does not take funding from governments or the United Nations. That's not always easy. It means we can't always do everything we want when we want, because resources are limited. But moments like this one, when government aid is frozen, withdrawn, or used as a political cudgel, remind us of how prescient that model really was. It means we can speak truth to power. It means we're not constrained by donor agendas or diplomacy. It means we can put refugees at the center of our work, not just in our rhetoric, but in our actions. And it means we can continue to be that fearless voice that Sue and Charlie envisioned, the one that won't back down when governments fail, the one that doesn't go away when headlines fade. Tonight, we are also joined by Ezra Klein, whose insights on politics, polarization, and possibility will no doubt challenge and inspire us. We need that. We need voices that push us to think bigger about what it means to build a more welcoming world, just as Sue and Charlie did nearly half a century ago. To their children, Emily, Michael, Mia, Peter, and Sita, thank you for sharing your parents with us and for carrying forward their light. Their lives were acts of grace, their legacy a living one. It is my deepest honor to present the 2025 McCall-Pierpaoli Humanitarian Award in memory of Sue and Charlie Morton. May their example continue to guide our work, and may their faith in a more just, more welcoming world strengthen our resolve to build it together. I'd like to invite Susan Goodwillie to the stage. Susan was the first full-time executive director of Refugees International, and the Morton family has asked her to accept this award this evening on their late parents' behalf.
Thank you, Paul, for your remarkable story. Thank you, Morton family, for giving me the honor of accepting this award on your behalf. To the RI board, Jeremy, your amazing staff, and all of you wonderful friends and supporters, thank you. What an extraordinary community you are. None of us would be here, and many of us would not be the people we've become without Sue and Charlie Morton. Proud children of the heartland, they met at the University of Tennessee, where Charlie was president and Sue the sweetheart of Sigma Chi. They married, produced Emily, Michael, and Mia, gave to their communities as they did to their work and family, but always dreamt of a bigger world, greater challenge, good trouble. When Charlie was named Mr. Pepsi-Cola for Southeast Asia in 1972, they moved to Bangkok, and their lives changed forever. Cambodia fell to the Khmer Rouge in 1975, and Sue converted their home into a makeshift hospital where orphans from Phnom Penh received care as she arranged their adoption in this country. Sue and Charlie adopted Peter, already a teenager, and later his sister Ta, into their family. After she witnessed the pushback of 40,000 Cambodian refugees over a cliff into a mined field below, Sue fearlessly asked world leaders at the 1979 G7 summit in Tokyo to raise their quotas for refugees. She also successfully implored, as you have heard, Congress and Jimmy Carter to deploy the 7th Fleet to rescue refugees at sea, and Refugees International was born. In the early years, RI was sustained by Sue, Charlie, and a brave band of volunteers, some of whom are here tonight. The mission was clear from the start: to investigate the challenges displaced people face, develop policy solutions, mobilize action, and hold the powerful to account. Always at her side, Charlie met budget shortfalls, provided wise guidance, and sustained Sue's indefatigable drive to build an organization that would create a more welcoming world for those fleeing persecution. When she asked me to become executive director of RI in 1982, I found her deep commitment to refugees irresistible, her mission compelling. But with scarcely any operating funds, our first office was in the supply closet of the Indochina Resource Action Center. I lived on a tiny houseboat on the Potomac, and my father tore his hair as I took on yet another soul-stirring but barely salaried job. When my 15-year-old Volkswagen fell apart in Sam Waterston's lap, he agreed to join the board because, as he noted later, I decided these people needed help. Other notable and generous souls joined the board, and the chairman of Royal Jordanian Airlines graciously flew me as his guest to Thai refugee camps so that I could continue the vital work Sue had begun. Like a benign tornado, she lifted up my life and so many others who joined our team. Gently but firmly, she guided, goaded, and inspired us to dare to do what no one else was doing: fight for the rights and protection of forcibly displaced people and their access to life-saving support. With Sue as our North Star, Refugees International became a trusted, uniquely independent source of advocacy and policy recommendations to save refugee lives. Their daughter Mia remembers traveling with her mother on planes with refugees. She'd give away everything we owned to them, then be the last person off the plane with barely a tissue in her purse. Daughter Mimi told me, "We had parents who not only taught us, but showed us how to live lives of service, lives of joy." In these dark days for our democracy, besieged by corruption, incompetence, and gratuitous cruelty, we celebrate tonight the very different vision our founders exemplified. With open hearts, joyful energy, creativity, generosity, integrity, and intelligence, Sue and Charlie created RI. Always venturing far beyond their comfort zones, they lit up the world with their lives and their love. How proud they would be of all that RI has become. Now, today, as our own government threatens millions of hardworking, tax-paying refugees and immigrants. It's up to us to carry on the Morton tradition. If Sue were here tonight, she'd remind all of us that we must stand up for what is right, demand due process, and not stop until America is once again a great and welcoming place for those who have lost everything. Thank you, RI, for being here still. Thank you, RI, for being here still, against all odds, boldly, fearlessly, the scrappy, strategic voice for refugees that will not be silenced, just as Sue and Charlie imagined. Thank you. We're not finished. We are delighted that several members of the Morton family are here with us tonight. Daughter Emily, also known as Mimi, and son Michael are here. Daughter Mia is a bit too far away to travel at her home in Vanuatu. And son Peter and his wife Dani are on a medical mission to Cambodia, following in his mother's footsteps. Alas, we lost Peter's sister Ta a year ago, but her two daughters, Sotia and Michelle, and their partners, Eric and Chris, are with us, as is granddaughter Katie, Mimi's daughter. Will you all please stand? And Emily and Michael, will you please join us on the stage to receive the award from Sopal?
A little dusty in here. Susan, thank you so much for those wonderful remarks. I feel a real weight and a real privilege and a real honor to be able to follow in Sue's footsteps. And I know all of us who work for the organization feel that inspiration and also that obligation that she set with her example and that you captured so beautifully with that remembrance. So thank you. All right, I'm going to welcome all of you to we're going to have a short break in the program now. Food will come out, and we will then proceed to a fireside chat between me and Ezra. So we'll be back in a few minutes, and in the meantime, during the break, we're going to have a short video of a trip that one of our refugee fellows, Lucky Kareem, recently made to Bangladesh along with our advocate Dan Sullivan. Lucky was one of the very first Rohingya refugees from Myanmar to have been resettled to the United States from Cox's Bazar in Bangladesh after the 2017 genocide that forced her family from their homes. And earlier this year, she was the first ever Rohingya refugee, as far as we're aware, to be able to return to the camps as a US-based advocate. We partner with her through our Refugee Fellowship Program, where we every year partner with a group of refugee activists and advocates and integrate them and collaborate with them in our advocacy and enable their priorities to become our priorities. We are really honored and pleased to have Lucky with us here tonight. She came down from Chicago for the event tonight. Lucky, can you just quickly stand up? There we are. So without further ado, we'll run the video, we'll have a short break, and then we'll proceed to the fireside chat. Thank you so much.
I didn't choose or decide to be a refugee or start my work at a very young age, but that's the only option I had to support my family, myself, and my community. I took my activism as a responsibility, not as a job. My name is Lucky Karim, originally from Burma, Myanmar. Back in 2017, after the genocide against Rohingya and against humanity were committed by the Burmese military, I was forced to flee my home when I was just 14, and I spent over 6 years as a refugee in the world's largest refugee camp in Bangladesh, Cox's Bazar, before getting resettled to the United States in December 2022. I was the first resettled Rohingya to be able to go back to the refugee camp. I was welcomed by everyone. All of them were so happy and excited to have me back. It was very emotional, a mix of emotions. Seeing my grandmother for the first time after 2 years was very emotional for me. As I said, we're very close to each other. We shared the house together for my entire life until I was 14, right? So she's almost like my mother. I'm so grateful for the opportunity that I was able to go back and especially meet with some new arrivals who recently arrived from my hometown, Mongdo. My community had thousands of questions for me about their future, when they can go home, how their future might look like. It was not easy for me to say goodbye, not having any solution or answer to their questions. Very emotional seeing them still in the same place, same positions, and even the situation have gotten worse since I left. So yeah, it was very emotional. So I think I was already familiar with Refugees International even before I joined formally as a fellow. So they have been so supportive, direct supportive of my work. And as I said, they're not a stranger to the community or the work that I do. They did everything they could to take me back to refugee camp. So I think that already ends the story. So they've done quite a lot. I'm committed to my work, to continue my work and my fight until everyone is safe in Myanmar. And none of us are safe until everyone is safe in Myanmar. That's my ultimate goal. The world should not turn away from Rohingya, simply.
I apologize sincerely for interrupting what sounds like some great table conversations, and there will be plenty of time to continue them in about 25-30 minutes after when we go back out to dessert and drinks. But in the meantime, it's my great pleasure to introduce our special guest, Ezra Klein. Ezra is a political commentator, a New York Times opinion columnist, host of the incredible podcast, The Ezra Klein Show, author of several books, Why We're Polarized, and his new book, Abundance. And for me, and I'm sure for many of you, he has been an indispensable voice over the last few months in particular. His podcast has been a go-to source for thoughtful, clear-eyed, and often challenging commentary on how we should interpret and understand and navigate the turmoil that we are experiencing in our country. So I'm really looking forward to talking to him and hearing what he has to say, and I know all of you are as well. So Ezra, please join us up here and join me in welcoming him. All right, we're working. Good. Ezra, welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's been wonderful to be here, and there's very little that will remind you as much that you have a desk job as hearing about the work you all are doing. I feel very unworthy of being on this stage tonight, so thank you.
Well, thank you. And so I wanted to start. You've talked about some of the political theory, or how do we understand what is happening in the country and the rationale and what's motivating some of it. And one of the things that has really struck us as Refugees International is in the first few months of the administration, the president and Elon Musk have really prioritized things in our space. They have targeted refugees, they have targeted displaced people, they have targeted asylum, but we expected a lot of that. A lot of that they did the first time around. But what we didn't expect as much is they're also targeting foreign aid, not just for reduction, but for abolition. We see this attempt from Elon to wipe it all out, and that wasn't expected. And they've been explicitly going outside the rule of law to do this in many cases. So how do you understand the purpose there, the project that they're working on, and how should we understand what that says about some of their larger goals?
My friend Adam Serwer, who works at The Atlantic, had an essay and a book in the first Trump term. Can you all hear me? Great. It was called The Cruelty is the Point. And his argument was that if you look at a lot of what the first Trump administration was trying to do, a lot of what it actually did, you could tie yourselves in knots trying to understand, well, what was this attempting to achieve? This kind of gratuitous cruelty, this kind of making an example of people. And his argument was that was actually the thing that it was trying to achieve. And I think we have seen this flower into something different in Trump's second term. I think you have to understand what Trump and Stephen Miller and Elon Musk and others in the administration believe in and are representing as an actual ideological challenge. An ideological challenge to the kinds of views held by the people in this room. A view that empathy is a fundamental weakness. This has begun to be expressed in more and more explicit terms on the tech right. A view that to care about those not born here is a betrayal of your own nation. A view that to spend so much energy on the weak or the voiceless is ultimately corrosive of the kind of human excellence and I would call it authoritarian action that they believe eventually makes countries great, or in Elon Musk's case, species interplanetary. And so starting with USAID, the examples they've made of so many immigrants, the hatred that often radiates off of them, the contempt for people who have lived lives that are so unimaginably hard compared to what they have lived. People who have exhibited bravery coming to this country that's so far beyond what has been asked of anybody in the administration. It is an attempt to reorient the country's moral compass. It's not just a policy. It's not a rhetoric. It's not a provocation. It's not trolling. It is a worldview being instantiated moment by moment in an increasingly and ruthlessly clear way.
And what are the risks as that plays out? Where does that potentially take us? We've seen already in some of the tactics that they road tested at AID, that they're taking those now and applying those in other parts of the government. You've talked about the risk of if they can summarily detain and deport without due process an immigrant, what's to stop them from doing it to an American? And there's that kind of tactile level of the individual person, but you're also getting to something bigger, I think, which is more fundamental about what should America be in the world, what should the American government represent in the world, and kind of where does that go if this course continues?
Yeah, I think everything you said is right. And in most of my shows, I try to focus on those questions of the literal risks, the things we think of as tangible. Yes, I believe that if you can get the disappearance machine rolling, then the lesson of other countries and other times and other places is it will roll pretty damn far. When governments begin to realize they can just disappear the people who cause problems for them, they do it a lot. Every one of these things poses risks like that. But I do think we're seeing, there is a more fundamental just clash of civilizations happening inside of our own civilization. And it's a thing I've been thinking about more recently, a thing I've been thinking about more here tonight. When you ask about the risk, I think that learning cruelty is a genuine risk. I think that learning how to not care is a habit. If you get better at it, you can employ it more. If you can persuade yourself, if you can persuade those who follow you, if you can persuade others to see this kind of compassion as a weakness and openness as a vulnerability, then a lot can follow from that. I wouldn't really pretend to know all that can follow from it. I don't think it's all the things that they think will follow from it. But I think that the possibility of rooting a very fundamental infection in the body politic is more real than we often give it credit for. I am shocked, myself, by how different the young right is today than it was in 2017, by what has happened beneath this example in a pretty short period of time, how far and radical the ideologies that have happened really are now. And so I just do think there are all the risks you talked about. There are the risks to the actual people who will die because of the absence of aid, who will be sent back into situations where they will be killed. And there's a risk that you turn the country into something fundamentally else.
Yeah.
These are, believing in human dignity is a hard one fight when it is won. You read any history of the past, and what's remarkable is the way people are treated as pawns in the games of the powerful. That's just how we did it.
Yeah.
It was pretty normal. I was reading this book about Jerusalem, 3,000 years. The beginning of it is the most horrifying things you can imagine. And what's happening there now is quite horrifying too, but you realize how much it took for that to even be something exceptional. Yeah. Losing the exceptionalness of that is to lose something really quite profound that liberalism won slowly at great cost over a very long period of time, and it can be broken.
And I think your point on training to accept cruelty, one of the things that struck me and chilled me early on in the administration with the dismantling of USAID was the total disregard, and not just disregard, the disinterest in even acknowledging the human toll of that. That would, if this all went away, if we went the route that Elon Musk has tried to set us on, you would have 6 million more people dying of HIV in the world. You'd have 8 million more people infected with HIV. You would have tens of millions of people deprived of food. People in the tens of millions would be dying. And there was a total disregard for that, total disinterest in that. And it's a chilling thing to think. If that death toll, if that impact can be accepted overseas, what are we also, as you say, training ourselves and training our politics to accept?
I think it's really worth highlighting the word children in there. If you ask Elon Musk, aside from Mars, what he cares about, he will tell you falling fertility rates. The human race is ceasing to reproduce itself. That is the single worst thing we face. He comes into power, and the first thing he does is destroy the most effective things we do to save the lives of children around the world. I recognize that some part of him thinks he can replace them himself. But what's revealed there is that it was never about children. It was never about the human race. It's always about specific children. It's always about a certain kind of human race. I want to be careful about which words I use and don't use up here. But the moral core of this is very rotted. And it's all the more so because if you're a person who can imagine yourself as being on the side of humanity, and then you can justify doing this to human beings, or even feel you don't have to justify what is going to happen to the actual human beings, then I think we're seeing something is different here, right? It is an effort to transform humanity. It's an effort to change who is part of humanity. If what I'm saying sounds stark or it sounds a little bit grotesque, I think it is stark and grotesque. But I think that you have to take people seriously based on what they do. Elon Musk is a lot of things. He is not a stupid man. The people around him are a lot of things. They are not stupid. Stephen Miller is not stupid. They are not unable to get good information. They are not unable to fact check a lie. When they repeat a lie or believe a lie, it is because they want to believe it. When they repeat a conspiracy, it is because they want to repeat it. And when they cut that aid, it is because they want to cut it and they want the things that will happen to happen, or at least they don't care if they happen.
Yeah, that's right. And the question, the point that you make on information, they have access to all the information. They have access to different information than what they are using. They have access to different information than what they are saying, and they are choosing disinformation. And I think it creates a real challenge for those of us who want to stand up for whether it's the rights of refugees, foreign aid, to break through that. You've talked a lot about attention and the dominance of attention, and they've gotten very good at dominating attention. There's a debate now, I think, in progressive and centrist circles, and about how do we, which fights to pick, to put it one way. Should we all be talking about immigration? Should we be avoiding immigration? Is it smarter to talk, what is the best way to neutralize some of that approach to politics? Do we do that by engaging it and pushing back? Do we do that by just avoiding it and talking about other things? Obviously this has really roiled a lot of people on the left over immigration and the border following the election outcome.
So one just reality is that what's going to matter most is what they do. And what very well might save democracy is that Donald Trump has the dumbest possible idea about how global trade should work that anybody could imagine. And so he's tanking his popularity at extraordinarily high speed. So that might just be enough for Democrats to take back some power in 2026 on its own. But in the long run, the people perish without vision. I'm not among those on the left who believe you should only pick 80-20 issues. I'm just not. And one reason I'm not is that, first, I don't think you know what the 80-20 issues are. And second, the way attention works and the way motivation works and the way inspiration works is that people need to believe you stand for something in part so they can know what they stand for. And one of the reasons I emphasize that this is an actual clash of worldviews is that I think that the people who believe in openness really stopped defending that, really became insecure and quiet. And on the one, it was a strange mix of an absence of vision with an excess of disorderly policy. So I don't think anybody did a good job in the Biden administration of defending a generous immigration policy, but they allowed a disorderly border. I don't think USAID was well defended, but everybody I talked to there will admit that there was things they probably shouldn't have been doing. And I think that it insists that if you're going to sort of build the more humane and tolerant open world that a lot of us want, that you both defend it and you take the policy behind it extraordinarily seriously. In my sort of work that has nothing or very little to do with this in abundance, this is why I spend so much time on the ways in which government fails. Because if you want to defend government, then you have to care that it works, much more than anybody else does, so you can make a case you actually believe about it. Look, the whole basis of Trumpism, right, is make America great again. And day by day, they are filling in what great means. And I don't think people like it. And there's going to be an opportunity for someone to come along, or some coalition or party, and argue that we should actually make America good again. And I think people want to be good. I don't think they want this version of greatness. I do think they want a version of goodness. It's why when I talk to Democrats, I am always very insistent, at least in my view, that they should not over-index on the politics of 2024. That in 2024, the thing people talked about in what we now call wokeness was trans athletes in NCAA sports. And there are all these edge cases that got chosen. But what's going to become the key of this now is cruelty. The American people, there's a lot of things they don't like that Democrats do, but they don't like cruelty. Family separation was a disastrous policy for the Trump administration in the first term. There is a middle path that can be taken here. And so I think the politics of not being cruel are going to be meaningful. And if people hide from the forthright argument that then requires they make, I think that will ultimately be a mistake. You want to go to where the puck is going to be. And right now, because of what the Trump administration is doing and because of the horrors that it is creating, and you begin to see those breaking through, like with Abrego Garcia, where suddenly these things have a face on them, a person, a story, a person you can imagine, and then you begin to imagine that prison and you being in there and you not being able to speak to your children. And then that changes, and it's not an 80-20 issue, and all of a sudden Donald Trump is underwater on immigration, not way above 50% on it. So I think it will change, but I think in order for it to change, people need to be willing to make the argument, find the examples, and believe that the American people, they wanted something, but I don't think any of us really believe they wanted this.
I think that's right, and we've done some really interesting polling recently, just in the past few months, looking at some of these questions, and found, very surprisingly to our pollsters, that when you poll deportation of people who came here on humanitarian status, and we specifically named Venezuelans, Haitians, Afghans, and Ukrainians, 56-36 people are against that. And when you go to independents and swing voters, the margins are even bigger. So it's not good politics. This cruelty is not good politics, and people don't. We absolutely see in our polling that people want an orderly border. They want to feel that it's fair. They don't want their communities to feel overwhelmed. But at the same time, they don't go from that to saying we should be brutalizing, we should be cruel. They still want to be good, and they want to see their country as good.
And that means that for those of us who believe in something very different, there's a difficult balancing act we need to do too. I don't think this is the most important moment for it, but that moment is going to come, right? And that's true in how government works on domestic policy. It's true in how it works in foreign policy. And it's recognizing, I think, in a pluralistic society, that you need to be able to hold contrasting tensions in yourself. And if I'm going to be self-critical of myself, of liberalism in the past 4 or 5 years, I think we lost some of that. That sense that you had to embody, or at least show you understood, the thing that you did not yourself represent. That liberalism is a balancing act, and an open society is a balancing act. And that it's in showing you're doing the balancing that you can calm people's fears enough to open up their compassion.
As you think about how we do that over the next several years, how do you see the role of civil society in that? We are, as an organization, we're nonpartisan. Obviously, partisanship has sort of partisans are very divided on the issue that we care about, and that puts us as a organization trying to be nonpartisan in a tight spot much of the time. But I think, as you're saying, there is a deeper, I think, cross-partisan desire to be good as a country, to get past some of this, and there may be more commonality. So what do you see as the role of civil society, somewhat engaged with politics but not fully of politics, to try and push that forward?
I think the role of civil society is to hold on to its values. And civil society is no one thing. It's unfortunately this maddening coordination problem. That in a way, there's an argument in political science that all power is a coordination problem. A ruler cannot do all that much himself, right? They can't run around themselves deporting everybody and adding on tariffs and marking up prices at Walmart. And then the resistance cannot do that much itself. And so everything is about how coordination works. The advantage that incumbents always have is a superior capacity for coordination. They control the military, and they control the tariffs, and they control the tax auditors, and they control all these different things. And what the Trump administration has been attempting to do is use every lever of power to impose its own coordination and break the coordination of any kind of opposition. In a way, that was what the decapitation of USAID was about. In addition to ideologically, why start with USAID? I think for some of the reasons I said. But procedurally, why do it that way? They could have annihilated USAID's budget through Congress. That's not a thing. You think Republicans wouldn't zero out USAID for tax cuts? Of course they would. What they had to do, what they were trying to do was show the entire bureaucracy that they needed to be feared. They were making an example of USAID so they would have an easier time at State, at the Pentagon, at the Treasury Department. And the thing that civil society has been doing in fits and starts, and not always as well as I wish it had been, is every node in civil society, be it a business, a nonprofit, an advocacy organization, a university, is a node for cooperation. What they do affects what everyone else like them does. If the big law firms bend the knee, then the next biggest law firm has to bend the knee, and the next one, and it becomes harder and harder and harder until somebody calls a stop. If the universities fall, one after the other, it becomes harder until one of them that is big enough stops and creates a possibility for a counter-coordination. So I think that part of the job of every individual member of civil society, be you a journalist like I am or an institution like yours, it's not to be in relentless opposition. If the Trump administration does something good, that would be wonderful. It's to be true to your own values and acting like a member of the society that you want to be part of, so that it's easier for everybody else to act that way too.
I think that's a wonderful note to end on. Ezra, thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you to all of you for joining us here tonight. There are dessert and drinks out in the lobby. There are notes out there and notes on here if you feel moved to give tonight or in the future. We would appreciate your support. And obviously, we appreciate your financial support, but as Ezra underscores, we need your involvement. We need you to stand up for these values. And we as an organization are going to be very focused over the next 4 years on standing up for and fighting for displaced people, fighting for values of welcoming and openness. And we need all of you in that. That this needs to be more than just a job for the NGOs. This needs to be a job for the people, for the citizens, and we're working on building that, and we look forward to working with all of you in that fight. So thank you.
Oh, yeah.